Welcome back. And it's my pleasure to introduce the next session, which is Sweden, the next EU Council Presidency. And I'm delighted that we have Annemieke Ålenius with us, who is the Deputy Director General of the Swedish eHealth Agency. She has responsibility for the national coordination and strategy, and she represents Sweden in the EU Health Network. She was recently appointed as a Special Commissioner for Health Data as a national interest, a legal framework for interoperability. She is also the Swedish expert representative in the EU's eHealth network, and she has a master's degree in social sciences. Annemieke, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored to be able to speak for this wide audience with representatives from so many countries and branches. First of all, I would like to give you a short introduction about Sweden for those who do not know our country. We are a geographically large country in the north, but we do not have such a large population. We are about 10 million inhabitants, and we have a long history of science and technology in Sweden. In days like the one today, it becomes very clear, as we are the country that gives the a Nobel Prize. So today the Nobel Prize in chemistry was presented. We also have a very large interest in life science, and more than 100, we have more than 100 national quality registers in our country. We have quite a population that is quite digitally literate, and there's also a very large interest in sharing health data, mainly for scientific purposes. So that's a short introduction about Sweden, so you know what kind of country that is talking to you. I also would like to say something about the presidency, because that's important for you to know. In the EU, the European Union consists of a lot of countries, and each half year, the presidency of the council is shifting between countries. So in January to June next year, Sweden will be president in the Council of Ministers and will be leading the or at least coordinating being the president for the work done in the European Union. And this is not, let's see.
Domésticos.
So this is not. Oi. Now I hear somebody speaking. This is not the first time we are presidents of the European Union. We have been there twice before. The first time was in 2001, and at that time the Swedish the euro was introduced. But I'll get back to that. And I'm not able to say so much about the presidency's priorities because it will be communicated later this year. I have some things I can tell you. And the website for our presidency will open in December, and you see the link to the presidency here. If we look back to 2001, the European Union had 15 member states. Now it has 27. And the euro coin, the currency, was first going on sale in banks in December. It was also the year of languages, which we thought was very interesting to name, because language is very important for people. The general political direction of the Swedish presidency will be about providing security for EU citizens and strengthening the EU's role in the world. That is one of the main priorities. Another priority is stop organizing crime, because these crimes, they are crossing borders. So it's really an area which we can work together to diminish the organized crime. A very large challenge for the whole world, but also for the EU, is the dealing with the climate problems, and therefore we want to speed up the green transition. In Sweden, we are very much working with this area, and we think we can contribute with our experiences, but also trying to find ways to speed up the work for getting this green transition ongoing, which is also an important mean for doing so is using digitalization. Strengthening the EU's competitiveness for jobs of the future is also one of the priorities for Sweden. And of course, the last but absolutely not least is safeguarding the fundamental values of the EU. That is the general political direction of the Swedish presidency. During the presidency, we also have to deal with mainly 3 legislative proposals that are ongoing. The first one, which you certainly have heard talking about, is the proposed regulation on the European health data space. It is a very ambitious proposal, and it has to be discussed and negotiated very thoroughly because it is a very ambitious plan. So it should be able to be implemented in all countries. There's also some revised pharmaceutical legislation which has to be finalized, and also the regulation on substances of human origin is a legislative proposal that will be in focus during our presidency. At the moment, the Ministry of Social Affairs is planning for one informal EPSCO meeting concerning health in May, and also a high-level meeting on health in February. There will be also 2 expert conferences on health. As you might know, Sweden had elections in September, just for some weeks ago, so we do not have a government in place, and therefore we can't really tell you yet so much about the subjects for these expert conferences, but they will probably be in the area of life science and cancer. And of course, it is very important in the work that is done in the European Union that even if we are changing presidencies, the work should continue so that it doesn't start every half year. There are ongoing activities that have to continue. And in the area of eHealth, our French colleagues started a very important work on the ethical principles that should govern when we are speaking about digital health or eHealth. And that dialogue has only started, but it is a very important dialogue if we want to be able to tackle all the different difficult issues and questions we will face in the future when eHealth and digital health is developing. We also have a success story, which is called the COVID certificates. We have built an infrastructure for being able to use these COVID certificates as a very secure way of handling the pandemic. But what should we do with this infrastructure? Should we wind it down as the pandemic seems to disappear, or should we develop it further for other purposes? That are also discussions that are ongoing and have to continue next half year. And then finally, there is a directive from 2011 on the application of patients' rights in cross-border healthcare, and that as long as that directive is still working, we should apply it, and with that also the eHealth network will continue its work as long as this directive is applicable. So there will be a lot of work to be done. So there's absolutely, I'm not afraid at all that we will sit with our just waiting. There's a lot of things to be done. That was my last slide, I think. Yes. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation.
Annemieke, thank you so much. I wonder if we've got a couple of minutes for some quick questions. I think if I can take you back to a question which has come up about, do you think that EU presidencies provide good opportunities to promote digital health initiatives? I know that you mentioned you mentioned the COVID certificates, and and as an example, but given that you're from the eHealth agency, what's your view on what the opportunity the presidencies present?
I think it's a very good opportunity to be able to present the issues which are important for your country, and they can differ very much. I mean, as I told you in the beginning, Sweden has a long history of science. We have quite a literate population concerning digitalization, and we have this positive attitude of people who want to share their data. But that is also because Sweden has been working for a long time with trust. It's very important. The people in Sweden, they have a very large trust for all the authorities, and they know that their health data are in safe hands. And we want that situation to continue. We want to share, of course, we want to cooperate with all our friends in the EU, but it is important that if we start sharing health data, that we do this very cautiously, because when something happens with the trust of the people, yeah, well, then we get people who want to opt out, and we'll get this bias in the material which we want to use for different purposes. So that is an area which is important for us, and therefore also we want to go on with the work that France started concerning the ethical discussions among this in this area.
Yes, and that makes perfect sense. And I think that earlier on in the summit, we've had the point that trust. I think you were then speaking from the perspective of Swedish citizens trusting that their data, if it's being shared outside Sweden. But there was reference earlier to an EU survey of 35,000 people during the COVID crisis, where the recognition that only 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 European citizens was prepared to share any data with public authorities. So that, if you like, there are some very skeptical member states around sharing any data, let alone health data. And I'm guessing that that's why building on those ethical principles becomes a really important first step in building trust, not just inside your own country and other member states, but actually across all member states in the Union.
Yes, exactly. That's very important. All countries have different histories. We should remember that as well. And the people, the memories, they have good memories. But I think we also should follow these principles of minimum data sets and trying always to use anonymized data, open data. We should only in those situations where we really need the personal data, then we should of course have it available. But that is in such a small share of cases. In most cases, you can do a lot with open data, which is anonymous, and also with other ways of not showing the personal data, and we have to work with that, and we have to show the good examples, and we should discuss, and that's why ethical principles are important. Even if we can do things, if there is a possibility, a technical way of doing it, it's not sure that we should do it.
Yes, and again, in a couple of the sessions during the summit, particularly the panel on the European health data space, there was an emphasis placed on that how much work needs to take place in the next couple of years as the regulation goes through the parliamentary legislative process, but also the fact that there are key actions at member state level. And I was just wondering that as the Swedish eHealth agency, how do you see collaboration between the member states working over these next couple of years? Do you see that you'll have close relationships with similar agencies and organizations in other member states? How do you see that practically working?
Well, there are different ways of doing it. Of course, in the Nordic countries, we very much have this Nordic cooperations, and that is something which we have for many years. So we will build on this Nordic cooperation. There will be something which is called Nordic Commons is already going on, which is like a Nordic health data space, you could say. But of course, we also want to learn from other countries. The Baltic states, they are of course very interesting for us because they're geographically very close. The Netherlands are very interesting, but many other countries, for example, the initiative, as I mentioned, from France is interesting. There's work going on in Germany concerning health apps, for example, and I could go on. I mean, each country is active in a certain area, and that is the fine thing with the European Union, that we help each other and we can use each other's experiences. And this is also facilitated by the European Union's joint actions, for example. There is this ongoing joint action towards the European health data space, which is coordinated by Finland, where we share a lot of experiences.
Yeah, TEDAS.
So,
yeah.
TEDAS, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's fantastic insight. I am incredibly grateful to you for your time and for sharing the information that you've been able to share about the Swedish presidency. And I think it just leaves me to say that I hope that the Swedish presidency is a fantastic success and that it helps you in the work at the Swedish eHealth agency. So again, Annemieke, thank you very much indeed.
And thank you very much for being able to be here and talk with you. Thank you.
You're welcome.